My dad slept with a 24-year-old when he was 60 and demanded that I take care of the child as repayment for everything he's done for me. I refused and went no contact. 18 years later, his son showed up at my door, calling me dad and threatening to drag me to court for it. Hey, everyone. So I, 48 male, am in a really strange situation right now, so any advice and help is welcome. 18 years ago, my dad, who was 60 at the time, slept with his neighbor, who happened to be a 24-year-old woman. My parents' marriage was toxic at best, but my mom had never cheated on him, even though she complained about him all the damn time and he would crib about her as well. They were just not a good match. And I constantly wished they would separate because of the never-ending fights and arguments. And then finally my dad gave in and cheated, and with his neighbor no less. Back when he slept with his neighbor, I must have been 30, and I was living by myself in an apartment. I'm an IT professional and could afford to live a nice life. So, my dad approached me when his neighbor got pregnant to take care of it. I was disgusted to learn that he'd slept with someone so much younger than him, even younger than me, and that he cheated on mom. I refused to be caught up in any of this, but he insisted and tried to convince me to take care of the baby by saying that I needed to consider it as repayment for everything that he'd done for me so far. I still said no and made him leave me alone by threatening to report him to the police for harassment if he visited me again for any reason at all. After that day, I decided to go no contact with him because this was just the last straw. I'd only kept in touch for my mom's sake because my dad was a downright awful person. But after she found out that her neighbor was having her husband's baby, she finally decided to pack her stuff up and leave. I don't even know why their neighbor was choosing to have a 60-year-old man's child when she herself was so young and had her whole life ahead of her, but I didn't bother to find out. I severed any and all ties with my father and never heard from him again. My mother divorced him after that and moved out of that house as well, so neither of us knew what he was up to. Now, 2 weeks back, a guy around 18 years of age showed up at my doorstep, and before saying anything else, he confirmed my name and age. Once he was sure of my identity, he told me that he'd finally found me and that I couldn't run away from my responsibilities anymore. The strangest part of that was that he'd called me dad. I'm a married man now and have been with my wife for 15 years now and even have a 13-year-old son, so I couldn't risk them hearing any of this. So, I came outside, shut the door to my house and took him aside to speak to the guy. He told me that his mother had told him about me, but she didn't know where to find me earlier since I'd moved away and blocked her everywhere. But now that he knew who I was, he was here to collect what I owed him and make sure I pay for his college tuition now. I was absolutely lost for a minute, but then he told me his mother's name. Yeah, it was my dad's old neighbor and this was my dad's son, so technically my half-brother. For some reason, his mother had told him that I was his real father and now he was here to get money out of me and he was threatening to take me to court otherwise. Once I connected the dots, I was relieved that this wasn't actually my son and I explained the situation to him. But he refused to believe me and said that he was not going to let me off the hook so easily and he wanted a paternity test to be conducted at a hospital of his choice, and I agreed to it readily since I had nothing to hide. The very next day, the paternity test was done and needless to say, I was not his father. The poor guy was devastated when he realized I'd been telling him the truth, and when he asked me where his real dad was, I told him that he'd have to ask his mother about that since I've cut my own father off almost 2 decades ago. And then he told me that his dad had never played any role at all in his life and had gone MIA even before he was born, according to what his mother had told him. She was a waitress and had worked really hard to raise and educate him all on her own. But, unfortunately, she didn't have enough savings to send him to college and he wasn't willing to opt for a student loan, so he'd set out to find his father. But now, he knew that his mother had lied to him about his real dad and had probably been too embarrassed to tell him the truth. I ended up feeling really bad for the kid since he was just a couple of years older than my own son, and here he was struggling to think of a way to pay for college just because my horrible dad had decided to just abandon his own child. So I told him not to worry and promised him that I put him in touch with my dad within a few weeks. I didn't know if I could do it, but I'd already promised him. So I got to work and even told my mom to help find him. She hadn't spoken to him in ages, and we weren't even sure if he was still alive or not, but my mom asked around the neighborhood they used to live in and found out that my dad had sold the house and moved to Missouri so that he could live on the farm with his family. I did some digging and found out where he lived, and since they had a business phone number on their website as well. So a few days back, I decided to call that number and ask for my dad. Luckily, I did manage to get through to him and told him that he needed to get in touch with his son right away or else I'd make sure that he'd be taken to court and is forced to pay up. My dad told me to stay out of his business and then disconnected the call, but I forwarded that number to my half-brother and left him to deal with the situation. I also came clean to my wife about this and told her all about my half-brother because I really wanted him to be a part of my life now. The poor guy has been through a lot, and I would be more than happy to be able to do something for him. It's not his fault, his father's an awful person and he doesn't deserve to be treated like this.